Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. This is the Thursday agenda. As usual, this is the program, the weekly program that we do every Thursday. Thank you for joining us from your homes, on your phones, whether you're joining us on NTN television, whether you're joining us on Facebook, on one of the live feeds from my MP page, the Vice President's page, the People's Progressive Party page, wherever you're joining us from, thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us. As usual, before I get started, and I've said good night to all of our viewers, I say good night to my little son Sawyer. It's time for you to be in bed, son. Daddy loves you. Time to go to bed. Now, while we wait, I would encourage you to share our link and to let others know who would be interested and like-minded and who might want to join us tonight and to participate in what we're saying. We're seeing viewers from New York, from Toronto. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Rajendra Bihari from New York. A few others who are joining us from Toronto, from Florida. Happy to have you join us. Someone is saying that they're not hearing. Operator, is that an issue? So, persons are watching from Minnesota, Sunil from Minnesota. Persons are watching from across the United States. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all for joining us. There are a few things, and two topics in particular, that I would like to address, and I'd like to explain a little bit about how it works, so that you could have an understanding. So recently, the opposition and sections of opposition sympathetic press would like to say that the persons who were involved in the riot or the riotous behavior at Monrepo and on the East Coast, that they should not be charged with criminal offenses. There are persons who have views that, you know, it's done, it's gone, and if you were to do anything about it, you would be raising up an ant's nest and raising up issues. I see today that there's a wanted bulletin for Mr. Takuma Ogunse for his comments, which on a few programs ago, we played for you, but I wouldn't repeat. They are derogatory racial comments that were made. And persons are saying, well, what are you doing and why would you do that? And then there's some curious comments that I see where people say that to bring those people before the court is to weaponize the judicial system, and to bring matters that, and they try to insinuate that it is a government in some way trying to bully the people. I have this to say in relation to that, and we have to understand this. Every civilized country, and Guyana is a civilized country, must adhere to the rule of law. For too long, we have gone about our business where we always want to not, or we want to say we wouldn't stir up anything, or we won't do anything because everything is quiet now, and we should somehow be grateful that it is quiet. So we shouldn't say anything when persons break the law with impunity, when persons are damaging others' properties, when they are taking people's possessions, we should just somehow let that go. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades, that can never be right. That can never be the approach. Don't leave it and let it be because somehow you have to be grateful that we are peaceful in Guyana. The law must take its course. Everyone who breaches the criminal law commits an offense, and it is the obligation of the police to charge those people. If they are innocent, it will be proven. But who could legitimately stand with a clear conscience and say that what Mr. Ogunse said is not racially hostile? How could you describe that as any form of free speech anywhere in the world? The people who were involved in the riot at Monrepo, we all saw the videos, we all saw the images. People taking people's possession, people burning a bus, burning stalls, looting. That's not free speech. If you want to protest, anyone wants to protest in Guyana, you have to do so peacefully. And you have to do so within the confines of the law and with regard to your fellow citizen. You have no more superior right to your opinion than others do. But your opinion will attract criminal penalties if you say things that are racially insightful. If you go on the road and protest and burn and damage people's property, if you try to loot when there is a protest on. You got to understand, we can't sit quietly. We can't sit by and say, well, okay, we should be grateful that there is peace, so we shouldn't do anything, and we should let that go. Then we become a society of convenience, which unfortunately will be inconvenient to the average citizen. We can't pick and choose what we want to do. We can't pick and choose which aspects of the law we will apply. The statutes are there, especially in a country where there is racial tension, there are issues that persons are saying. And the advent of social media means that they now have a platform. And they say these things and it spreads. The Vice President on Sunday in Babujan was at pains to say that every comrade, every citizen should have a social media presence, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Facebook. And when you see these preposterous comments being made, these tall tales, these lies, these racial utterances, you should respond to it. You shouldn't just let it go because somehow you're above commenting on things on Facebook. Then what you doing there? Why are you on Facebook and Instagram scrolling if it's above you or it's beneath you for you to respond to what people say when they're saying things that are racially insightful, when they're saying things that destroy the fabric of your country, that it's too much for you to respond to that. You should respond to it. You should answer to say what you're saying is wrong, and we don't support that. Otherwise, it perpetuates. We want to take a hands-off approach. Then where are we going to end up? Because racial racial inciting, that's how it goes. It builds. History has taught us that. All across the world, it doesn't end well. I've been saying that over and over to you. But when you have these madmen saying these things, every citizen should call them out for it. Say this is wrong. And when they have said things that violate the criminal law and they have done things that violate the criminal law, they should be made answerable. I by no means say that you must go and fine and charge people frivolously for wrongdoing. But there was a tape, there was a video, there was a recording of what this man said. So why shouldn't he be charged? The vice president, years ago in 2015 or 2016, when Christopher Ram wanted to file criminal charges which did not take into account the entire speech that the vice president made, did not take into account all that was said. Now that is trying to use the courts as a weapon. That is trying to put someone in trouble, as we say, and trying to put someone in a difficult position when they don't deserve to be. But if you look at the speeches that were made, and if you look at the actions that took place in that protest, the speeches that are being made are inciting people to do those kinds of actions. And I understand there are people who are frustrated for one reason or another. There are people who feel that more should be done, their lot in life should be better, their economic status should improve given the development that is going on in Guyana. That's all fair, and you're entitled to speak up for your rights. But you're not entitled to make derogatory racial statements. You're not entitled to incite people to hate each other. You're not entitled to incite persons to burn markets and rob the occupants of those markets. You're not entitled to do that. You're not entitled to try by your speech, by your conduct, to cause hatred in a country. You're not entitled to these things. And free speech does not cover that. It can never be free speech. Free speech is entirely different. Being racially divisive and inciting racial hatred is an entirely different matter. No one is entitled to do that. Freedom, that is not a freedom that exists. And it should not. We are a melting pot in Guyana of races. We have two main races, but we have so much that are mixed. We have so much of the other influences. This is what Guyana is. For better or for worse, this is what it is. And we can't allow people to continue to incite with impunity. You have to understand, the breaches of the law must be investigated, and if there is a case to be filed, and if the person has breached the law, they must stand trial. That's how it must work. Not that we let it go because we don't want to make him a martyr. We don't want to give him attention or popularity. That could never be the response. Because then what people will do is play on those fears, play on those needs that we don't want to cause a problem. We don't want to stir up an ant's nest. They will play on that and continue to break the law with impunity and continue to undermine harmony in a country. in this country, and we should never tolerate it. Whether all that it is, I mean, you see these things happening, where there are videos on Facebook of things happening, and nobody's being punished for it. Even if all they're charged with is indecent language. I'm not saying you have to go about jailing everyone. That's never going to be my view. But you must be accountable for your conduct. If it is that you are cursing and swearing on the street at other people, and you see these videos on Facebook, and yet we seem to want to do nothing about it. Horrible events take place, you see shootings happening, you see, because we have become numb to the idea. We watch these videos for entertainment. We don't recognize, and we should recognize, that watching what you are seeing is a breach of the law, and it should be that person who has breached the law should be answerable for their conduct. But when you hear something happens, an accident, or God forbid, a crime scene, a shooting, everybody wants to see the video from in the stores, the CCTVs, the incident that occurred at the airport that the police are investigating, relating to an older lady that should have been taking a flight out to Guyana, but then the story goes that you could see the CCTV footage, and she went to a taxi, she went to apparently a city hotel, all of these things, and everybody wants to look at the video. I'm chairman of the airport. You would not believe how many people call and want me to share that video with them. I'm not going to share the video with anybody. I didn't, and I wouldn't. That's a police matter, and whether the news agencies or whatever obtain it from, that's their business. But we all are excited to see these videos, and we're all excited to see what happens. And we look at the CCTV footage in stores where people are being robbed and guns are being drawn, and we don't seem to think that this is a criminal matter. And the reason why it escalates is because we are adopting an approach to let things go. We should never do that. Never do that. If all that they charge with is indecent language and they pay a $20,000 fine, they're accountable. That's what the law says, they're accountable. You can't turn that into imprisonment if there is a minor penalty. Of course you can't. But that's the way the system should work. Now, when people continue to make these racially insightful comments, we all talk about it, but no one gets charged. It's time that we change. People must be accountable for what they say. For inciting hatred, for inciting racial tension, we have a whole act about it in Guyana. We have criminal offenses set out. You have to understand that these things are for the better good of society, that we don't permit it. Because we can't have a society where people will say those things with impunity. But we can't risk in a society, a civilized society, to fight among ourselves in this way. If you break the law, and if you are not, or you cannot understand the society in which you live and how you ought to behave, then you should be held accountable. And understand, ladies and gentlemen, it's a different thing to being charged and being convicted. So you should be charged. You should be held accountable for what it is. We hear stories, we see in the media, another man who I can only say has lost his marbles entirely, is claiming the entire village of Kingelly. The entire village, he says, his family owns. He has nothing to show that he owns it, but he goes up there to terrorize people and damage property and make threats. And people are saying, well, okay, he's crazy, I don't think that that's an excuse. He should be held accountable. The police should investigate what he's done and they should place them before the courts to answer for it. You're not making anybody a martyr by charging them. If they've broken the law, they've broken the law. We can't allow. This is why people don't obey the minibuses in this country. It's sad to say they don't obey the traffic rules because they just continuously get away with it. We have to be more accountable. On all fronts, we need to be more accountable. And we need to not allow, oh, that's not significant, or we don't want to stir up an ant's nest. We need to, or we should be grateful that everywhere is peaceful and we don't have. No. We build society one building block at a time. And law and order and the rule of law is essential as a building block. And we have to maintain law and order. And we can't allow some people to get away with things and others must be afraid. That's not right, and that should not be tolerated. And we need to start to ensure that persons are accountable. So those who are thinking of doing it will find themselves accountable too. And they will have to be answerable to what? They will have a fair trial in a court. But everybody could see what was said in these circumstances. Everybody could see what was done. No reasonable person would think otherwise. And then we have these other things where various organizations come about and they formed and they claim to be civic organizations and they claim to have the high moral ground and they are somehow intellectually superior to us mere mortals. They know more than everybody about everything. They are experts on the environment, on oil, on gas, on the air, everything that they are. And they write letters in the press and to government agency directing that we demand you do this, and this is so, and therefore you should do that. You should see these things. Now, I say this. No one has a monopoly on ideas. That's the first thing. And no one should be permitted to call themselves a civic organization when they don't actually have an interaction with the people of Guyana. And they don't actually take the views of a majority or a wider group in Guyana. Now, one such organization is the Human Rights Association. They claim to be governed by an executive committee. Now, we've all seen what the Attorney General has said. Since 1979, they're not compliant with our laws, but they claim the moral high ground to speak on human rights. They make no comments for 5 years about nothing that happens. They make no comment that the government refused to leave office when a no confidence motion was passed lawfully by Parliament. They make no comments when the government refused to leave office following the election, tried to rig the election. They made no comments. They made no comments when a chairman of the Elections Commission was appointed without reference to the law. All the recommended names were rejected. They made no comments. They made no comments about public expenditure that was going on without any supervision. They made no comments at that time. No comments when laws were put in place in relation to the COVID-19 rules and taking people away and quarantining them into Mary and on the Linden Highway. They made no comments. They made no comments. They made, all of a sudden, they've been revived. Now let me tell you, and you can check this for yourselves, if you are to go on the Facebook page of the Human Rights Association. You can't tell who any member is. But what you can tell is when that page came into being. For an organization that supposedly has been around since 1979, their Facebook page creation date is the 25th of September 2020. That's when they decided they needed a social media presence. Not when the then government were trying to steal an election in full view. Wouldn't allow observers in, wouldn't allow people when they were doing the state counting from the bed sheets and the spreadsheets. They made no comments about all of that. Now, in a small country like Guyana, I believe it was a comment from Minister Ramson. This is a small country, and everybody kind of knows everybody's business. I don't mean that in a negative way, but people kind of know. But who are the executive committee of the Guyana Human Rights Association? We know there is one gentleman, Mr. McCormack. But who is this executive committee that he consults? Who is this executive committee that makes the decision? Not one person has ever come forward and say, I am on the executive committee of the Guyana Human Rights Association. So all of you, and all of you watching, and all of you who are on Facebook, you should be asking the Guyana Human Rights Association on their page. You should go to their page. Their page has their telephone number, and you should call that telephone number too and ask, who are the committee? When do they have meetings? Where are these meetings held? Who do they consult? What is their source of funding? We should do this, and please, no one should do this in a disrespectful manner. You should not harass any of the persons associated. They have the right to have their organization, and you should not intimidate. And I am very serious. You should not be aggressive. Don't go shouting at people and all that. That's not what this is about. But you should find out. Ask them. Who are their members? Who are the executive committee? And why is that so secret? Why wouldn't they publish on their Facebook page that these are the people? Why wouldn't those people stand up and say, we are those people? Stand up for your views. There's nothing wrong that you have views that are critical of the government or critical of an organization. That's all right. But you must also let people know where that criticism is coming from. What is driving it? It's important, because if you don't do that, you mislead people. And no human rights association worth its salt can say that misleading people is par for the course. When breaches of the Constitution are taking place in the 5 years, with the elections, with the appointment of people, with insufficient polling stations, you said nothing. And I don't want you to then say, well, oh, we're going back. But you claim to be a human rights association. And we would like to know, you must have a reason. You might have a good reason. For all we know, you have to say why you said nothing. You owe the public that you claim to represent and love so much, you owe them an explanation as to why you said nothing. You owe them an explanation as to who you are. Otherwise, this moral high ground and superiority that you claim to have, you're really not entitled to it. And your views should be seen as the views of one man. And if that's your view and your view is that of one man, yes, you have the right to your views. But don't pretend to be what you are not. We have laws, we have statutes in this country that list organizations that are civic organizations especially, that should be consulted or should have a seat at the table when things are being discussed. And the Human Rights Association is one such, listed in some statutes. But we want to know who you are. From 1979 to now, you're very different. You have behaved very differently. You were critical of the government in the 80s and through the 90s, equally critical of the government, but you were conveniently absent for 5 years. Constitutional rights are human rights. You didn't seem to care then, and why? Now, the people who are associated with you, it's important that we know who they are. Are they persons from other organizations? Do they have their own political agendas? Do they belong to political parties and using the Human Rights Association as a vehicle to express views and persuade the public of a point of view that is really not without bias? Stand on who you are, say on who you are, and by God, comply with the laws. If you're a company, then you should comply with the laws. Who's your executive committee? These are things that are critical. We know that there are organizations, there are various organizations that do invaluable work. The Vice President today mentioned organizations that work with children in association with the criminal justice system, I know, and who get public funding. And that's all right because they help a portion of society. And we know what their role is, what they're trying to achieve, and they disclose who their boards are. But it's like organizations that want to say that, look, we should fashion and we should persuade you as a country that this is the right way to go. But you're being secretive about who you are. Similarly, we have these people, we have persons who are environmental specialists about everything, who want to identify all these issues in relation to the Gas to Shore project, who want to say about all the environmental mayhem that will happen. And one of them has the audacity, a lawyer, to say in proceedings and to say publicly that our oil production and development and our gas to energy plant will somehow, we are not entitled to it because we owe it to all mankind to not pollute the atmosphere. I say this to people like that, and I make no apology. When the developed world was clear-cutting their trees, when they were manufacturing, and they still manufacture plastic, when they were exploiting their petroleum reserves until in many places it's finished, you didn't tell them anything. We're still a carbon sink, meaning we are still, our forest is still intact, and we are still not a net polluter to the world. Now, before you come and tell us that, go and tell the major polluters of the world, who are continuing, by the way, that they should stop too. Why is it the Guyanese people should disproportionately bear this burden? This is an opportunity for the development and betterment of Guyana and its people. People who have lived in a poor country in poverty now have a chance to be different. And the developed world wants to, why don't you go tell them? Why don't you tell them about all the power plants, the coal plants in Australia and Europe? Why don't you go tell them to stop? China, India, tell them that they should get within the guidelines that are required for their emissions. don't stop us. We are still doing more with our forests than we are taking away with our growing industries. There is no such obligation to mankind. That is imaginary. We have to be allowed reasonable development. The people of Guyana deserve more. And you should see the nature of these letters that are written. These letters demand that you do this, and if you do not do this and do that. Where would all of this come from? Why would someone fight so hard against projects of development in a poor country that will change the lives of people? We ought to know. We ought to know why. There must be some explanation. But I hasten to add, and I don't mean it only as a tack on, I mean it as a reality, frontal issue. Obedience of the laws, even by the agencies in the state, should be priority. So we must do whatever happens, the same way that for racial issues you must obey the laws, you must obey all the laws, not only some. And everyone with an obligation should obey those laws. Now, it is important, it is very important, that Guyana's development trajectory continues, that the environment in which it is done continues, so that we get better roads, we get more bridges, we get cheaper electricity, we get reliable water. These are all things that are critical to Guyanese as citizens, the average citizen, that we get more housing. These are the things that will make it better for everyone. And these are the things that if we don't exploit our petroleum resources, we wouldn't be able, on the scale we are doing, to do what we are doing in terms of development and in terms of making people's lives better. And as a country, we need to understand this. This is Guyana's opportunity to move forward. And for us to be able to move forward this way, we have to exploit the oil reserves. I mean, we hear all the arguments, and we hear, whether you want to say it's a good contract or a bad contract, I've always expressed my views on that. I don't think it's a great contract, but I'm a lawyer, and I will never say that you just breach a contract. So you have to accept where we are there. Then we have to address what comes in the future contracts. And we expect improvements, and we expect better arrangements for the country. Those are all part of the things that go on. But if we stop the petroleum development program that's going on, and we stop Exxon from drilling, and we stop the FPSOs from pumping oil, how is Guyana going to fund all that is required? There's no doubt we're poor. There's no doubt we need to be able to lift ourselves up. So how else are we doing this? So for those who want to say, well, oh, we owe it to this one to do that, and we shouldn't do that, they should bear in mind the average Guyanese citizen will benefit meaningfully. Their lives will be better. Those who are raising this, they have houses. Some of them don't live here. They travel at will. They have the economic power to live the life they want. They're not the ones punishing. They're not the ones struggling. I would assure you, maybe none of them have ever taken a public transport in Guyana, a minibus in their life. So you got to understand this, that Guyana needs to go forward with its development so that the people of Guyana could be better. And like I said at the very beginning, we all have to be active, and we all have to be more vigilant on social media, call people out when they're saying things. call them out when they're saying false things, not only the racially insightful things, when they're promulgating views that we should not produce our oil, we should leave the reserves there. Why people who say that, speak up. It's your country too. Get on social media. When people are saying these things, let your voice be heard, whatever that voice is, whatever your views are. But you see, unfortunately, what has happened in Guyana is social media is fairly popular in Guyana. Nearly everybody's on Facebook. And the one shouting loudest appears to be winning the argument. Hella wrong, totally unreasonable, but they're the only ones speaking. And you can't only, there is no value in proceeding that way. You have to let your views be heard. You can't sit on the sidelines and not call them out for it. You have to express your views too, because this is your country too. Now, do not take that in any way to mean that you gotta go on Facebook all day and not do your work and be quarreling. But you know you're on Facebook a lot. So instead of just passing by everything and thinking it's below you to comment, you should let your views be heard. You should speak up for what's right. You should speak up for your view, whatever your view is. And more people are then not going to be misled with the position. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining me. Ms. Bridgelal, Parsaram, all of the persons who are posting. I'm sorry while I'm doing this. I'm not good enough at this yet to be able to read your comments and still be able to respond to you or to keep my train of thought. I apologize to that. I hope to get better at it, and I hope to be able to interact with what you're saying in what's going on. But as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for all of those who've taken out the time out of your evening to join me today. We're going to be back next week, same time, same place, for the Thursday agenda. And as always, please take care of yourself, and good night, and may your God be with you.